Hello, I am Jolie Long with the National Board for Certified Counselors. We welcome you to our webinar today. NBCC offers free live webinars on current and emerging topics of interest in the counseling profession. We value and welcome all practitioners, students, professors, and anyone working in the profession. Before we begin, I would like to share some meeting details. Closed captions are now enabled, and attendees can turn these on and off as desired. Interpreters can join the meeting via the phone number, ID, and passcode provided on this slide. A link to this PowerPoint presentation will be posted in the chat, so you can access the links on this slide. To receive continuing education, you must complete the session evaluation, including an attendance attestation. The link to the evaluation will be posted in the chat at the conclusion of the webinar. We will also send an email with a link to the evaluation following the webinar. We will only be providing continuing education credit for live attendance. This webinar will be recorded and made available on the Counseling Compact website for viewing purposes only. Due to the large number of attendees, the participants will remain in listen-only mode throughout the meeting. The presenter will be taking questions at the end of the session, so please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. Next. Today's webinar is titled The Counseling Compact, The First Steps. Today, we welcome Counseling Compact Commission Executive Director Greg Searls to talk about the Counseling Compact, how to apply for privileges, and ethical considerations for counselors. Next. I would now like to introduce our speaker, and his full bio is in the slides for your convenience. Greg Searls is the Executive Director of the Counseling Compact Commission and a licensed funeral service practitioner in the state of Wyoming. He got his start in the licensing world after he was appointed to the Wyoming Board of Funeral Service Practitioners in 2010. Director Searls has served as Wyoming's executive director for several licensing boards, including the Mental Health Professions Licensing Board. He served as the ex officio representative to the Counseling Compact Commission for AASCB until Wyoming joined the compact and was then named commissioner for his home state. I now welcome Director Searls to begin his presentation. Next.
Thank you, Jolie. I appreciate everyone being here. Thank you to NBCC for having me and hosting this. As Jolie said, we're going to give you lots of information and give you a chance to answer questions. So sit back, hold on tight, and we'll go through this information and do what the best we can to help you understand what the compact is, how it works, what states are participating, and even some ethical considerations for you to consider as you join the compact. And we're going to break it out kind of into three different parts, with talking about the compact, the commission itself, then the part that you're really looking forward to, how do you obtain privileges, and then the Q&A session. So currently, this is a map of the states that have adopted the Compact Commission law in our members that you'll see in dark blue state. And dark blue, the states in light blue have current legislation in their legislative session that are under consideration and could still be adopted during 2025. If a state is in gray, unfortunately, they're not a member of the compact. They don't have any legislation pending or had legislation pending earlier this year, and it did not pass. We look forward to working with those states to try to have as many states possible become a member of the compact, as we currently have 39 states that are members in the compact itself. Pennsylvania is the most active right now, with bills on both sides of the legislation in Pennsylvania looking to move forward. The other states we're still waiting to see. Michigan was just introduced about a month ago, and so we're waiting to see the progress there. Oregon and New York don't seem to be moving very fast, if at all, at this point. But we continue to monitor those on a weekly basis to have an understanding of any needs that they might need as far as having questions answered for their legislation and moving forward in those states. So why a counseling compact? We all know that the profession has been looking for a way to practice in multiple states without having to go through the cumbersome process of applying for a license in each of the states that they want to practice. And we noticed, especially during COVID, the heightened demand for counseling services, which continues to be a mass issue across the United States. And while this counseling compact is just for professional counselors, or some states may call them licensed mental health clinicians, it's going to take more than just this compact to address the critical issues that we have for mental health across the United States. And that's going to include, hold on, I'm going to say the actual S word in front of a bunch of counselors, but social workers are going to have to help with this problem. They're working on their own compact. Marriage and family therapists are also working on a reciprocity issue to help, and then addictions professionals will need to be a part of that solution as well. So we all have to work together to make it happen, but the counseling compact will give counselors a large step forward in being able to obtain privileges and work in multiple states through that privilege model. So while you're technically not getting a license in each of those states where you apply for the privilege, you will be able to practice under the same scope under that privilege in each state. And so, as I said, this is another step or another spoke on the wheel as to how you can obtain privileges in another state. It builds on the reciprocity and endorsement that are out there. It does not replace them, nor do you have to participate in the compact. If you don't qualify for the compact, you may still be able to qualify through other means, such as applying for reciprocity or endorsement through those states. And because the states have all agreed to this contract through the legislation to work together, it granted the commission rulemaking authority, but is also limited by that legislation. So if you're familiar with the rulemaking process in your state for like your licensing board, they can only adopt rules based upon what the legislators in that state have said. And the language for the compact is just like that. There's certain things that we can make rules on, but state sovereignty is protected in the compact, so states can still determine what is proper for counseling in each of their own states. The powers of the commission, as I said, are limited by the statute. And some of the powers that they do have are to establish bylaws, impose fees to cover the operating costs and activities of the commission and the staff. We have to maintain fiscal records, meet and take action consistent with the provisions of the compact, promulgate rules, establish a budget, and we had to establish and elect an executive committee. There's many other powers that the commission has, and those are defined in section 9C of the compact language, which can be found on our website at www.counselingcompact.gov on the governance document page. Under the language, each member state is given one delegate. It does not matter how many licensees you have in a state, each state has one vote. And that delegate has to be from the state licensing board or agency in that state, and therefore must be a licensed professional counselor, a staff administrator, or a public member to the board to be able to serve as delegate or temporary representative, which the temporary representative would serve in the absence of the delegate. As I said, the powers require the establishing of committees, including the executive committee. The executive committee consists of 7 delegates from the member states who were elected. And then we also have 4 ex officio representatives that represent the major organizations within the counseling compact, or the counseling profession, excuse me, which include NBCC, AASCB, which is the American Association of State Counseling Boards, the regulatory group, AMCA, the American Mental Health Counseling Association, and ACA, the American Counseling Association. Those 4 serve as ex officio and do not have voting rights on the executive committee, but serve in a capacity to advise and provide information to the delegates that serve on the executive committee. The executive committee then appoints delegates and temporaries to serve on the committees that we have, which currently include the Finance, Rules, Compliance, and Elections Committee. All committee meetings are open to the public. All commission meetings are open to the public. You'll find the links to those meetings at counselingcompact.gov as well on the meeting page. And those are all provided via a virtual means, including our in-person meeting that we do. The last one was held February 12th for the full commission in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, because we are required to meet annually, and the commission has decided that that meeting will be in person as well as virtually. so that we allow the public to participate in any of our meetings. The executive committee meets on the first Wednesday of every month at 1 o'clock Eastern for 90 minutes. The finance committee, the second Wednesday of every month at 1 for an hour. Rules committee, the fourth Thursday of every month at noon for 90 minutes. And the compliance committee, the first Monday of each month, unless it's a holiday, like next month, where Labor Day falls on that day, then we've adjusted it. But they typically meet at noon on that first Monday for 1 hour as well. Once again, all meetings are open to the public. You're welcome to click on that link and join in the meeting. All of the committees have a portion of their agenda that allows for other delegates in attendance as well as the public to provide comment. So why did we choose the Counseling Compact as a means to reciprocity in endorsement? The reciprocity and endorsement issue has been looked at since the 1980s, which is probably longer than some of you have been alive. And it continued to be an issue. And so after the Department of Defense made a presentation at a ASCB meeting, the American Counseling Association looked into developing this compact to make it an easier means, knowing that it would increase the access to counseling services for people. It expands marketing opportunities for you folks as licensees. Imagine being able to live in a small town and still have a full-time clientele to be able to provide services to while you're enjoying the life of small town America. And I say that coming from small town Wyoming, where I currently live. Uh, if you don't know, Wyoming is the least populated state. We have more pronghorn antelope in the state than we do people. And to give you an idea of just how small it is, the University of Wyoming is the only four-year educational institution in the entire state. And the football stadium holds a little over 33,000 people. When the stadium sells out, which it does on occasion, that stadium becomes our third largest city in the state. And that doesn't include the normal town around it, just the football stadium. So we understand when it comes to rural services that there's a need for people to have access to care that they may not be able to obtain in their small town, or also allow licensees to maintain that full clientele while living in those small towns. It also supports our military families. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the provisions of the compact that does that directly a little bit later. The compact allows for telehealth, but it also allows for in-person care. So if you live on a state border, this would allow you to have offices in both states if you wanted to see people in person as well as telehealth. The counseling compact also allows for a means to transport your license between member states if you have the privilege when you move from state to state. It also promotes cooperation among compact member states, as we've defined what the minimum terms are for licensure that allow you to say you can practice in multiple states. But it also provides consumer protection across state lines with our database that will include disciplinary information in that database, so that if somebody tried to apply for a privilege across state lines when they were under discipline in another state, the compact would be aware of that and could also possibly prevent them from the ability to purchase a privilege. So let's talk about privileges. This is what you're here for. How is this going to work? Well, I'm here to give you a lesson on how that will work today. So first, you need to understand that participating in the compact is completely voluntary. This is not something you are forced to do by any means. It may not be your business model. It may not meet your requirements because there's a lot of things that you have to consider when you're going to do telehealth in multiple states. Um, some of those considerations include documentation. What documents are you required to have from state to state as far as when you take on clients? Are there things that you need to provide them? What language is required in that document? How does it vary from state to state? But also understanding the difference in scope of practice from state to state. Just because it's legal to do in your state, if your client is visiting another state or has moved long term to that other state and it's not legal there, you cannot provide that service to them while they're in that other state. You would be violating the laws of that state and you could be held accountable for providing illegal services in that state. I want to go back to documentation for a little bit, but what about an emergency plan? Do you know if that client is in crisis and they're in somewhere else at the time of your services? who to contact. If you're not asking your client R where they're at every time you have a telehealth session, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. Please ask your clients, especially if they're using if they're a background you don't recognize, or if they're using a virtual background, to understand where they're at so that you can ensure you're practicing under the laws and regulations of that state, and that you have the ability to practice in that state, as most states require you to be licensed or meet an exemption to practice in that state. So you're in the middle of your session and your client says something to you. And does that require mandatory reporting? So you need to understand the difference of mandatory reporting laws from state to state. What qualifies as a minor in that state to report? If you, once again, these are all things that you need to consider and know as you're practicing across state lines. Now, when it comes to the actual business side of things, this is a whole different story. And understand that I'm not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax lawyer, I'm not giving any kind of legal information or accounting information or recommendations to you. I am not that person. As Jolie said in my introduction, I'm a licensed funeral service practitioner, not a licensed mental health counselor. So um, do you need to register if you're performing business in that state? Do you need to register with the Secretary of State to register your business? Do you need to pay income taxes in that state if you're providing services and receiving payment from Medicare or insurance companies in that state? These are all things that you have to be sure you understand, as well as does your liability insurance protect you as you work from state to state? Lots of considerations for you to take on as licensees to ensure that you're doing a ethical and safe manner of practice as you work across state lines. And a lot of these things became highlighted, as I said, with COVID. So hopefully, if you're doing telehealth already, you've already started to look at these things and understand these things. But if this is going to be something new to you, please take the time, get education, understand what it means to practice telehealth across state lines, and what your requirements are. So to be eligible for privileges, you have to live in a member state and hold a license in that same state. So if you live in any of the gray states that I showed on that map earlier, unfortunately, you're not eligible to apply for privileges under the compact. As well as if you live in one of those, if you live in a blue state but don't hold a license in that same blue state, you're not eligible for the compact. It's a part of the language that was adopted in the compact, and there's questions as to why, and there's a lot of legal reasons behind it that I don't have time to go into today. But as a licensee, your state has to be currently licensing based upon a 60 semester hour master's degree or 60 semester hours of graduate coursework in the required areas. Their state has to require postgraduate supervised experience. They have to require one of the national exams. The three national exams that the compact will accept are the NCE, the NCMHCE, or the CRCC. And you also have to have undergone a federal criminal background check as part of the licensure process. Now, understand, if you were licensed before some of these things came into effect, with the exception of the background check, you may be eligible for participating in the compact still under the legacy licensing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get towards the end of the presentation today. The federal criminal background check is not something that's grandfathered out. You must undergo a background check as part of the licensure process to participate. If your employer had you do a background check, you cannot then share that to the licensure board to say, here's my background check, see, I'm good. Legally, they're not able to share that information, and a self completed background check actually says that it's not for licensure purposes. The other thing, as a licensee, you cannot have any discipline against your license or a privilege to practice within the previous 2 years. So not only your home state where you live, but also if you hold multiple licenses in multiple states, they all must be free from discipline within that 2 year time frame. So where do you need the privilege? If you're practicing under the compact, you need to have a privilege where your client is at the time of services. So if you normally see your client in Wyoming, your Wyoming license, and your client decides they're going to Florida for vacation but still wants to see you, you're going to need the privilege to practice in Florida. The compact does not look at where the clinician is at the time of services, only the client. If you're operating under your single state license, then that may be a different story. Please check with the state to see if you need to be licensed in that state to practice, as well as serving clients outside of the state under a single state license. Um, and I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but for example, Texas requires if you have a Texas license, that you be licensed in Texas to serve clients, as well as even if you had a privilege and you were on vacation, we'll say visiting Dallas, and wanted to see a client in another state, you would still have to have that Texas license, even if you had a privilege to practice, because Texas is a non-member state, and therefore you can't practice under the compact while in Texas. If you have more questions with that, please talk directly to Texas to understand their rules and regulations for practicing. How do you obtain a privilege? Well, I've talked a little bit about some of these things that you have to do. And first of all, you have to have that valid license in your home state that's a member of the Council and Compact. You have to do the background check. You have to do a jurisprudence exam if it's required in that state. 18 of our 39 member states require a jurisprudence exam or some kind of reference to the state law, specific state laws and regulations that you have to complete for each state if they require it as part of the application process. So, for example, I'm in Wyoming as a licensee. I want the privilege to practice in Arizona. I have to complete Arizona's jurisprudence exam before I can apply for the privilege in that state. Likewise, if I then want a privilege in Colorado, Colorado is going to have a separate and different jurisprudence exam that I would have to complete before being able to obtain the Colorado privilege as well. For each privilege you seek, there's going to be a state fee. Currently, the reporting states, we have just a few that have reported, and they will be from $0 to $400 at this point, with the average being approximately $95. And the states can adjust those at any time. And as I said, they vary from state to state. We will post those as we get closer to going live and have more specific information for the states that will be a part of the initial rollout. With each privilege, you'll also be charged a $30 administrative fee that will be paid directly to the compact to cover our operational cost, which, as you saw earlier in the demonstration, is part of the requirements of the legislative language. Once you've completed that part of it, you'll receive your privilege to practice information via email, and you can immediately start practicing in those remote states. So let me show you exactly how this process is going to work. As we've said, we're working on developing this database and system to make happen, and we hope to begin taking applications here in the fall of 2025. And so I want to take a minute and show you exactly how that process is going to work. So you'll be required, and we'll provide the link to go to the CompactConnect database. And the CompactConnect database has been developed in party with the Occupational Therapy Compact and the Speech Language Pathology and Audiology Compact, because the compacts have very similar requirements for the compact language, and we work together to develop this to reduce costs and hopefully speed up the ability to provide privileges to practice in multiple states. So once you're at this page, you'll click down here where it says register as a practitioner. You will have to provide this following information, and your state will have already uploaded your information to show that you are eligible to participate in the compact. They'll review that you've got all those qualifications or meet that legacy licensure requirement and have your information in the database before you're able to do this process. Some states are automatically uploading all of their information to the compact database. Some states are requiring you to opt in and let them know that you want your information sent to CompactConnect. Each state will have their own process for that, and you'll need to talk to your home state to determine which method that they're using. So you're going to provide your first name, your last name, the last four of your social security, and your date of birth. All of that information must match exactly how it is on your license and comes from the licensing board. So let's say your name is James, you go by Jim, your license says James, be sure you put James in this line and not Jim, because if you put Jim in, it's going to say account not found, and you'll have to then resubmit information or go back to your state to determine why you weren't found in the system. You're going to provide your home state license where you live and have that license so that that's verifiable. And then, as I said, we're developing this with the other compacts. So you'll need to choose that you're applying as a licensed professional counselor. The last piece of information you provide us is your email. That does not have to match the information that's on file with your state licensing board, but this is where you'll receive communications from the compact, including that initial information when you go to register that will provide your temporary password. Once you have that temporary password email, you can go back to the dashboard and then you can log in as a practitioner. I already have that information and have an account set up, so it's going to be just a little bit different, but you'll go in, you'll change your password. You'll also be required to set up multi-factor authentication on your phone or device to be able to receive or to have a code from your phone when you go to log in each time. If you're not familiar with Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator, we will have some information on how to download and use those apps so that you will be able to have that code on your phone at any time. Most people are familiar with receiving an email or a text to obtain that code. This will allow you to have that code directly onto your phone. So signed in, every person will have their own unique dashboard that will look something similar to this. Now, please, as a reminder, I'm not a licensed counselor in the state of Ohio. This is just test data so that we can demonstrate this for you folks and have an understanding of how it's going to work. Up here, we'll still show your home state license when it was issued, that it's active, that it expired, and that you are compact eligible under that license. All of that will come from your state. You'll then be able to either go up here on the right where it says obtain privileges, or here on the left with the pull-out menu, purchase privileges from there, and it'll take you to the next step. This is going to ask you to verify all of your information, that it is true and correct. This is the email that you want to receive information at. So you're going to test that it's correct. That's where you're going to receive information and be able to continue on in the process. Then you'll be taken to this list of states where you can obtain privileges. Notice that Ohio is grayed out. That's my home state. I don't need to have the ability to purchase a privilege in that state. So it is grayed out so that I don't mistakenly purchase the privilege in my home state. You can then choose if you need one state or if you want them all, you can do it all in one transaction. I'm going to cut some of these back because we don't need that many for demonstrative purposes. So as you see here, this is going to show you if you purchase a privilege today, what the expiration date of that privilege would be, what the state fee charges for this. Please understand as well that the fees in this, with the exception of the administrative fee, are test data and are not confirmed state fees. What the total of that is, and then if they require a jurisprudence exam, which Alabama does, you will have to attest that you've already completed that, as well as that you have read and understand that their scope of practice and how it differs from yours. Arkansas does not require a jurisprudence exam, so it has only the one checkbox. Once you've chosen your states, you can go to the next screen, and it's going to ask you for some more attestations and information. The first part here, either you are not under investigation or you are under investigation. You have to click one of these two boxes. In this one, it does not affect your ability to purchase privileges, but it is information for the compact to have so that eventually we can determine whether there was any disciplinary action taken against you as a licensee. You then have to check that you have no encumbrances in any state and against any license within the previous 2 years, and that everything is true and correct. If you lie in any of these questions, it's just like lying on a state application, and you can have disciplinary action taken against you and possibly your privilege revoked for lying on an application. Your next step is taken to a summary screen that shows you the states where you're looking to purchase the privilege, the total administrative fee, and your total that you'll be charged today. You have to click one last time to understand that all purchases are final and refunds are not issued. So please make sure you need that privilege before you purchase it, because if you purchase it today and realize that maybe that client's not going to that state in 2 days, 2 days later, you realize the client's not going to that state, you no longer need that privilege. We're not issuing refunds in that case. You're then taken to the credit card information screen. You'll put in your information. You'll complete the purchase. Once you complete the purchase, as fast as that transaction can run, you'll be given an approval screen. And then when you go back to your dashboard, those privileges should already show up on the dashboard to show that you've been issued the number and that you have those privilege, and you can start practicing that. If for some reason the system is going over or is over burdened with a number of applications at a time, it should be no more than the next business day that you have that privilege number in your database or in your dashboard and have that information to be able to show that you have that privilege. And those privileges will show up down here for you once they're purchased. Once you've purchased a privilege, for anybody out in the public that would need to verify that, say your employer, an insurance company, we do have a verification page where they select the profession type. They can select the jurisdiction if they want. They can select the first name. In this case, I will leave it blank. And suddenly, we need to check Mr. Fleming's verification. You'll see here that it's active where they have the privilege. And then if you click on that, it will provide more detailed information on the privilege, show that it's active, when it was issued, when it expired, the privilege number, and they can also view details to have more information. So maybe they purchase this privilege now, in a couple of years, they let it lapse because they no longer need it. And then a couple of years later, come back and they need that privilege again. All of that will be outlined on the history page so that people can see when it was active and when it was not active. So that's really how the compact system will work as a licensee. We believe we've set up a pretty simple process for people to be able to purchase privileges for those that meet the requirements of the compact. Privileges will expire on the same date as your home state license. So if you have a 2-year licensure cycle, your privileges will expire on that same date at the end of that 2-year period. And then you'll need to renew your privileges after you've renewed your home state license. So don't wait until the last week to renew your home state license and expect that your information will be updated in the CompactConnect database so that you're able to purchase privileges right away, because depending upon how long it takes your state to process your renewal, and then states are only required to update information to us on a weekly basis. So that could affect how long that information is uploaded before it's uploaded into the system, so that you're able to renew those privileges. When it comes to continuing education, if you have a privilege in a state, you don't need to worry about the continuing education requirements in that state, in that specific state. You only have to complete the continuing education requirements of your home state license. So for example, Wyoming's my home state. I have the privilege in Colorado, and Colorado requires 6 specific hours on addictions. I would not be required to complete those 6 hours for my Colorado privilege. I only need to complete the 40-hour requirement of Wyoming. So what happens when you change from a compact state, or you move home states, or you're PCS under the military? If you're in a compact state, you have privileges, and you move to a non-compact state, your privileges would then be revoked because you no longer meet that requirement of living in a compact state and being licensed in that compact state. So in my case, if I was in Wyoming and moved to California, as soon as I establish residency in California, I have to report to the compact. You're required under the law of the compact to report that within 30 days that you are no longer living in that state, and those privileges would be revoked. You would have to seek single state licensure in those states. Now, if you move from compact state to compact state, it's a much easier process for you. What you want to do, and pay attention here because I'm giving you the loophole to the compact to make your life a lot easier. If you're going to move from a compact state to another compact state, be sure you obtain the privilege in that new state before you move. Because if you do that, then the new compact state will have a conversion application that will allow you to convert your privilege to a home state license. And that application will not require you to provide your exam scores, your transcripts, supervision documents, or verifications from another state. Just like when you go to apply for privileges, none of those documents are required under the privilege to speed up that process. So there's no review of those things. The new compact state can require you to pay a fee and do a complete the jurisprudence exam if it's required, and complete a new criminal background check. Those are the things that they can require. So with that, it should be an expedited process. But because you have the privilege and can do in-person services, you can continue to provide services face-to-face while you wait on that conversion to take place and that new home state license to be issued. Then with your existing state, you can hold on what was your original home state. You can hold on to that license until it expires and then purchase the privilege, or that you can request that it be converted from a home state license to a privilege to practice. For our military personnel, this is one of the provisions that I said we'd talk about a little bit later. Military personnel can establish their home state in any state they currently are licensed in. So if you're currently licensed in North Carolina with the military, you can name North Carolina, and it can continue to be your home state for the duration of the active duty as active duty personnel or their spouse. Or if you were stationed in, we'll say, California, and the compact goes live, and you want to, and you have that North Carolina license, you can name as military active duty or their spouse that North Carolina is your home state for the compact and be able to obtain privileges to practice in the other states that are members. You will be required to upload documentation to prove the active duty status to be able to name your licensed state as your home state. Now, heaven forbid you have disciplinary action taken against your license or a privilege. The compact is designed for public safety, as is any licensure. And so, as I said, we have that information in the database to be able to share between the states. If a disciplinary action or encumbrance, such as a reprimand or revocation, basically anything that's reportable to NPDB, so a suspension, conditional license, any of those things happening at your home state license is going to upload that information to the compact as they're required to. And any state that you hold a privilege will be notified of the discipline, and that privilege will also be revoked because you no longer meet that requirement that your home state license be free from discipline for 2 years and that you have the ability to practice. Now that differs if the privileged state issues an encumbrance against your privilege. The only thing they can do is revoke the privilege. They can't give you a conditional privilege or suspend your privilege or anything like that. The only thing they can do is revoke. And if they do revoke it, the compact system is going to notify the home state and the other states where you hold a privilege, and then they can seek to contact your state to get information on the disciplinary action, and they can choose as well to take action against your disciplinary matter or not. It's going to be a state by state determination. And with the if the privilege is the one that has an encumbrance, your other privileges remain active until their expiration date, but you would not be able to renew them until that 2-year time frame has come to an end. So you have a privilege. Now what? Well, as we talked earlier, you've got a lot of responsibility. We want you to practice under the laws, regulations, and scope of practice as legally allowed where the client is at the time of services. I can't express how important that is. You know those differences so that you don't get into trouble for something that was legal in your state but is illegal in another state. Some of those common practices, gender affirming care, reproductive therapy, any of those kind of things that are high profile, you'll definitely want to understand, make sure you understand what is legal and what is not legal in the state where your client is at the time of services. Your privileges will once again expire based upon your home state license. and you do not have to do the state-specific CEU in a state where you have the privilege. When it comes to renewal, renew your home state license early. And then once that information's been uploaded and the new expiration date shows in on your dashboard, you can then seek to renew your privileges as well. The fees will be the same. There's not a difference between an initial privilege fee or a renewal fee for a privilege, as occurs in some states with an actual license. Some states will offer a military discount for that active duty personnel or their spouses as well. Currently, we only have one state that is indicated they will offer that, and it's a 10% reduction, but that will show in the system if you have that active duty information already uploaded when you go to seek a privilege to practice, as well as we'll list that with the state information. That as we get closer to going live, we will update the website so that it shows what the state fees are, what the links are to provide or how to get to the jurisprudence exam, so that you have all that information. Understand that we're looking here in the fall of 2025 to be able to start issuing privileges. Not all 39 states are going live at the same time. And that's because some states are still working on the data to make sure that we have what we need. Some states don't have the ability to do criminal background checks yet, and so they're still working to provide that. We're hoping in the initial rollout to have 5 to 8 states that will be in that initial privilege period. And as soon as we can confirm who those states are, because we still don't know at this point because of testing and things like that, we will provide notification on the website as to who those states are. Here is my contact information. The email address info@counselingcompact.gov, counselingcompact.gov for our website, and then the CompactConnect.org website. The CompactConnect.org website has a video similar to the demonstration that I showed you a little bit ago. So if you need to see that again, please go to their update page and you'll be able to find that information and view that video. Understand it will differ a little bit than what you just saw because we've made updates since that video, and we are looking to get that video updated on their website as well. But the prime requirement right now has been get things done and trying to get towards being able to issue privileges to practice so that we can meet the requirements for in the demand of the licensees and be able to serve clientele that have been asking this for years. And I know people say, Greg, this has taken a long time. What's the delay? It has been building this database system from the ground up. When we initially took on this project, I think we thought we could use one of the existing compacts, such as PT or nursing, that their database might work for us. And we found out that that wasn't an option, and we had to start from scratch. And while, yes, it's been a long time since the first states have adopted this, when you compare to nursing or PT, that all took 5 to 7 years, we're still under 5 years from the first state's adoption, and we'll be issuing privileges, hopefully, as I said, here in the fall. Couple frequently asked questions, and then we'll get to your questions. Your license was issued before the current exam. Our requirement were in place. Can you participate? Yes, more than likely you can. The Rules Committee and Commission itself has fully adopted a legacy licensing rule so that if you were licensed as an LPC at the highest level and don't require supervision, can assess, and treat behavioral health issues, you can participate in the compact. We're not going to turn away people that have been licensed for 10, 15 years when those requirements were different just because the standard has changed. If you've been practicing without discipline, you're more than welcome to participate in the compact. And your state will make that determination for us. And as I said, provide your information to the database. You have a license in the state where you work, but not the station where you live, but both are member states. Can you still use that license to participate in the compact? No, you have to live in a member state and be licensed in that same member state to participate. This one, the last one, your home state isn't a compact member, but you have a license in a state that is a member. Can you use that license to participate? No, once again, you still don't meet that two-prong piece to be able to meet the compact requirements. So with that, I welcome back Julie, and I think we probably have some questions.
Absolutely. We do have some questions, but first of all, I want to thank you, Director Searls, for sharing your time, your vast knowledge, and your expertise with us today. It's a lot of information, of course, to digest, and the journey has been ongoing for some time. So there have been a lot of exciting things that have happened along that journey. We are going to move to some questions and answers, and Director Searles has also put his contact information there and also the website for the Counseling Compact, which I can say from past experience, there's always information there and it's constantly updating. So I would say visit that also if you have questions following this webinar, and also get in touch with Director Searles with very specific questions too. But we're going to try to get to as many as we have time for here before the top of the hour. So we'll get right into it. And I'm just going to rapid fire you, Greg. Let's see here. So the first one is we had a lot of questions about valid license. So can you please discuss what the definition of a valid license is? For example, different states use different titles for their license, LPC, LMHC, LPCC, etc. So can you just verify what a valid license means, please?
Sure. As I said a little bit ago, to participate, you have to have that valid license. And by valid license, it's the highest level of licensure in your state that has the ability to assess, diagnose, and treat without the need for supervision, that does not have an encumbrance or discipline against it. Some states call it LPC, some are LPCC, LMHC. Your state will determine and hopefully post what licensure is eligible under your state to participate in the compact, with the understanding that social workers, marriage and family therapists, and addictions professionals, while maybe called counselors in your state, are not eligible to participate under the compact because they wouldn't meet those educational and exam requirements that we've discussed earlier today.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for reiterating that. The next question is, how will people in other states know they can see counselors in other states? Do we need to market in other states if we have a privilege, or would this news be shared publicly in some way?
In the counseling world, it will be widely shared. I know the major participants will pass out information and send out information to their constituents. But as far as you establishing your business in other states, that will be something you need to market to those other states to ensure that people have that information. We won't have a database from the website or a link that shows, I showed you the verification page, but it won't show who's eligible or accepting clients or anything like that. So you'll need to market to those states to show that you're accepting clients and have that ability.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, professional organizations such as NBCC would probably say, hey, this state is now open and accepting or issuing privileges or accepting privileges. So, you would know on a global level, but for your practice, just like you do for your individual practice, you would be marketing, advertising yourself. So, good. That's a good question, though. I haven't heard that one. Next question is, and I think you addressed this, but just want to reiterate it too. How do we access the jurisprudence exams for other compact states?
As we get closer to knowing what states are in the comment, we'll post that information in a link to their page. But if you currently go to the website, um, actually, let me slip over to our website real quick. If you hover right here, where it says compact map, there's a listing of the states where it shows which states require the jurisprudence exam. We'll eventually provide links to those states, but in the meantime, you can search for those states online yourself and find their jurisprudence information.
Excellent, excellent resource on the website. As I'm saying, there's so many things on the website at your fingertips. If you look around, it's very easy, very user friendly. So thank you for sharing that about the jurisprudence as well. Another question that has come in, and you may have covered this, but like I said, it was so much information to digest. Can you share again how often you would pay the state fee for a privilege to practice?
Sure. So it's going to depend upon your home state licensure cycle. So if you live in a state where you're required to renew your license every year, you'll also renew your privileges every year. If you live in a state that holds a 2-year licensure cycle, you'll renew those privileges every 2 years as well. So it'll depend upon your home state license.
Very good.
The
Yes.
other piece to that, if I can, Jolie, sorry to
Sure.
interrupt you, but if your license is about to expire in, say, a month or so, you may want to consider whether you want to purchase that privilege, unless it's an absolute emergency that you need that, because it would expire, if you bought it 60 days before your expiration, it will expire in 60 days and you would then need to renew it as well. So that's something you'll need to look at as for a business decision. And that's why when in that purchase screen, if you remember, it showed what the expiration date was, so that you have that information and know exactly what the expiration date would be if you purchase it at that time.
Yes, very, very good point to make. If you're, just for your business purposes, you want to make sure you're going to get that full extent of that fee that you're paying. So have to look at when you're going to be paying that. Thank you for that. Another question that we have is if our state is not currently part of this reciprocity compact, what is the best way to lobby for it or to promote it in our state? And this person is actually asking for the state of Illinois.
Sure. We have lots of questions come out of Illinois with this same exact question. And so the best thing you can do is, if you're not a part of your state association, whether it be the ACA chapter or whether it's the AMCA chapter in Illinois, reach out to that association and figure out what they're already doing to make this happen. You can also, if you go to our toolkit page, there's some information that you can take to your legislator yourself to provide them with it. Now, you don't want your legislator to develop this bill because without talking to the associations, because chances are there's already been some discussions about it as to why, whether it may be coming forward or may not be coming forward. So once you've done that, your association will be able to help you what's been done, and then you can assist them in moving forward with their with what they're working on actively.
Very good. Very good advice. Thank you. Another question that we have is how to initiate the background check and fingerprinting. For example, where can that be done, and how do we have that information sent to the compact? The person says they really want to get started on that if they can. So wanting to get a little more information about that.
Sure. The background check has to be completed through your licensure board, not through the compact. So it will be up to your state to explain how that requirement it goes. I'm not sure what state you're in, so I can't try to answer specifically on your state. But some states are opting in and requiring you to opt in, and that will trigger the requirement for the background check. But if you've ever had a background check as any part of your licensure application process, it doesn't have to have been last year or the year before. As long as you've had one at some point, you would be eligible for the compact. A lot of states did not have background check authority until they passed the compact. So it will still be something you need to complete, but it'll have to be through your licensure board. And a lot of boards are still establishing exactly how to do that, or are waiting for approval from the FBI to be able to run those background checks. So you'll have to wait till you have state specific information when it comes to the background check.
Very good. Thank you for that. And I just, you've made this point a couple times, but I want to reiterate it too. There's a lot of things that have to happen with your own state licensure board, right? To get the information, to meet the requirement, and then communicate with that compact database. So just want to reiterate that for everyone. It's a work in progress with your current home state licensure board and then with the compact commission as well. So there's a lot of communication back and forth about that. The next question that we have is, how is this different than just getting a license in another state if we are still completing a jurisprudence exam and fees from the state?
Sure, great question. And the biggest difference is the fact that you don't have to provide your transcripts, your exam scores, your supervision documents, all that documentation that takes time to have sent from other entities to the excuse me, state where you're applying for licensure. And typically the fees are also going to be less for a compact privilege than they are for a license. And everybody, you may look at Maryland and say, well, Maryland's license is $400. Their compact privilege is $400. Yes, but you're still not paying for that exam score, your transcripts, your supervision documents, your verifications, all of those things that are in addition to that fee. The other thing is, because we're not reviewing those documents, there's not a waiting period for it, that your privilege to practice would be issued, as I said, almost immediately or no more than the next business day if everything's running properly.
Very good. So it really expedites that process, which is what we've been talking about in the profession for a very long time. How do we expedite that process and make it easy for people to obtain a privilege to practice in another state? So thank you for explaining that. Another question that we have, and I think this is an important one and a big one, we've heard this a lot too at NBCC, is will most insurance carriers like Blue Cross Blue Shield allow providers to bill clients in compact states?
And boy, I wish I had a good answer for that, Julie. Unfortunately, I don't, because the insurance industry has been notified that this is coming and that people will be practicing across state lines. The insurance companies, however, have not told us what their policies or procedures are going to be able to accept insurance in multiple states. So that's something you would need to contact the insurance carrier directly for that information. But chances are you're going to be required to panel for that insurance company, just like you are in your home state, or Medicaid or Medicare, those kind of things. You'll still have to go through those processes for those approvals. And that's something you'll have to take into consideration when you choose to practice in multiple states and use the compact for that purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And my guess is with compacts becoming more popular, and not just in our profession, but amongst the professions, that insurance carriers are going to provide more information on that, and hopefully it'll become easier and easier to get answers to that and figure out how exactly insurance will work across the states. Um,
Exactly. The Department of Defense is pushing this as well. So we know there will be push from them to work out the processes as well.
very good. I think we have time for one more question. Let's see here. Trying to see what we want to end with here. This actually is a good question. I think a lot of people have this one. Is there a legal definition or a definition that the compact uses of reside in, or what your resident state is?
That's a great question. The compact defines it just as where your primary residence. And people say, well, how do I determine that? Some factors that you could look at to determine that is, where do you hold a driver's license? Where is your primary residence? Okay, if you're splitting time between, two locations, you snowbird, things like that. Great. Which one do you use as your primary residence when it comes to tax purposes? Those are all things that you can look at to help determine that if you're ever audited to show what your home state is. Those are the type of things we would look at to be able to show that, that is your primary residence.
Very good. And I see the FAQ for counselors is up there on the website as well. You're sharing that. And there's a ton of great information there on the website. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time to get questions answered directly from Director Searls right now. But we do want to thank you for sharing your time and all this information with us today. If you have further questions, certainly Director Searls is there to answer those and is happy to do that. The link to the session evaluation is posted in the chat, and we're also going to email it to you following the meeting. Give that a few minutes and it will come. To receive continued education, you must complete the evaluation, including the attendance attestation, by August 21st at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to email those certificates to you by August 28th. We're only going to be providing credit for the live attendance of this webinar. We really thank you again, Director Searls. We look forward to seeing you again in September. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. We hope you found the session informative, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Appreciate your time.